Several patrol officers were on scene. The scene was taped off. Detective Cervantes was on scene, as was Detective Nelson. I had called her at the hospital. She answered her phone, and I told her to go to the scene to assist Detective Cervantes.
Once you made contact with Detectives Nelson and Cervantes, did you start assisting with any processing of the scene at that time?
I did not.
And why not?
I went to the scene to have a conversation with them about what our plan was and what everyone's roles were. I informed them at that time that I was going to go back to the station and try to figure out how to make a death notification to Mr. Campbell's family.
And is that as part of the standard practice in an investigation involving a deceased individual to notify the family?
It is.
I imagine that would be a difficult part of the...
Objection, Your Honor. This is just getting prejudicial and doesn't have relevance.
I lost my train of thought. Why do you notify the family in that early stage of the investigation?
Well, what I wanted to do was verify firsthand that Mr. Campbell was Mr. Campbell. I was given a date of birth and a name. I was able to corroborate through pictures that it was the same individual, and only after that was I confident in making a death notification to the family.
And is it common practice to do that early on while the investigation is still being processed and you don't have all the information?
Yes, I think as someone who has a family, I would want to know as soon as possible if something happened to my loved ones.
And were you able to ultimately get in contact with the family?
I was. I went back to the station, and it was a difficult time for me. I think as a police officer, you take on the job knowing that you have to do death notifications. I've done several in my life. This one was different for me. I had lost a sister 10 months prior to this and received a phone call, so I knew exactly what this felt like.
Objection, Your Honor. This is
So this was off the objection, so we'll go ahead and finish off.
Okay. It was a trying time for me. It was one of those conversations where you have a number in your phone, and I probably looked at the phone for a half hour before deciding that I needed to have Lake Havasu City checked and Long Beach, California checked to try to find Les and Barbara Campbell. So I sent those jurisdictions out to their residences.
After notifying the family, what steps did you take next in your investigation?
They weren't notified then. They weren't able to make contact, but I had a conversation with Les after that. When that was done, I went back to the scene and I assisted Detective Nelson with collecting what was left of the remaining evidence on scene.
Okay. So by the time that you had even initially arrived on scene, had some of the evidence already been collected?
Yes, it had.
And you previously testified that when you first went to the scene to talk to Detective Cervantes and Nelson, that you kind of discussed roles and what each person would be doing. Is that standard practice to divide tasks, I guess, amongst detectives when working a case?
It is.
And after assisting with the final evidence collection, what was the next phase of the investigation that you participated in?
I knew that search warrants had been applied for and granted to search Mr. Campbell's residence, and I assisted him with that.
And
all right, folks, we'll step aside here. Before we go to break, I want to turn to Washington State, where our Court TV cameras caught up with one of the defendants released after the verdict in the attempted honor killing trial. Zara Ali spoke with Court TV yesterday after being found not guilty of attempted second-degree murder and assault. Prosecutors claim that she, along with her husband, intended to kill Fatima that day. Here's some of what she had to say.
If you could say anything to your daughter Fatima, what would you say to her right now?
I hope she come back in the home. I hope that I love her. Really, I love her. I need she come back and home. Sooner than like sooner. I need to come back.
Yeah. Have you spoken to your husband, Isan?
My husband also.
How's he feeling?
I pray for him. Maybe he get out sooner.
We'll see. Her husband, Ihsan Ali, was also acquitted of the top charge of second-degree attempted murder. However, he was found guilty of second- and fourth-degree assault, as well as unlawful imprisonment. He will be sentenced on August 18th. Prosecutors are still calculating his sentencing range, but suggested in court after the verdict that it could be between 14 to 16 months or longer. And coming up tonight, Vinnie Politan will sit down with Zahra Ali's attorney, Tim Leary, for an interview you do not want to miss. That's tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan. All right, coming up next on Court TV, the detective talks about a neighbor contacting police after she found bullet holes in her house nearly a week after the shooting. More testimony in the return mail murder trial next. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala, back now to Montana, where testimony is underway in the return mail murder trial. Jordan Palmer is claiming that he shot and killed his neighbor in self-defense in April of last year. Palmer says that he was putting a piece of mail that he found on the ground back in the correct mailbox when his neighbor, Stephen Campbell, aggressively approached and accused him of stealing and then attacked him. I want to head back to court now for more testimony from Detective Martin with the Belgrade Police Department.
Additional cameras out in front of their house that we could also have for the case. But basically just doing a sweep of the neighborhood to see if anybody saw anything that night or witnessed anything that maybe we didn't cover the night of the incident.
And out of everybody that you had contact with, did any of the individuals provide you with significant firsthand knowledge of the shooting?
No, there was one neighbor who heard it but didn't witness it.
Okay, and do you recall her name?
I believe it was the last name Deegan.
Does Megan Deegan sound correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And any of the individuals that you had that initial contact with, did any of them ever initiate follow-up contact with you?
Yes, I did.
And who would that be?
I believe her name is Beth Kim. She lives in the apartment complex to the south of where Stephen Campbell lived.
And what was the purpose of her following up and contacting you?
She contacted me on June 3rd, same year, and said that she had located bullet holes in her house 5 days after the shooting, about 5 days after the shooting, but she called me for whatever reason on June 6th to report it to me.
And once you received that information, how did you respond?
I went to her residence, spoke to her, got the information that she had located these 5 days after the shooting. I can't recall why she waited so long to call the police. I photographed the bullet holes, looked at the trajectory visually, determined that it was probable that the bullet holes were the result of that night.
This testimony requires expertise that was witnessed over the house.
Sorry, can you finish that last part of your sentence?
Yeah, I just said looking through the path of the bullet and how it entered her house and where it was coming from, it was probable that the bullet was one of the ones used that night.
Okay. So you said bullet holes. Was there still a physical bullet?
No, the bullet had, she lives on the second story of this apartment complex, and there was a bullet hole in a patio rung, a wooden patio rung that she has as kind of just outside her door. From that rung, there was an entry hole into her front door. Open up the door, there's an exit hole through the front door, and then finally another hole inside her dining room.
And did you take any photographs of this interview with, or is meeting up and getting this information from Ms. Kim?
Did I take any photographs?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And do you know what ultimately happened with those photographs?
I do. I brought the photographs back to the station. I entered them into WatchGuard, which is our evidence storage system that we use in the Belgrade Police Department. Attached them to the case, this specific case, where they stayed at that time. And then I found out later that due to a data migration issue with WatchGuard, the photographs were essentially rendered unviewable by us who were at the police department.
Okay, so you did take photographs, but you're unable to retrieve them essentially or view them again.
Yeah, I'm not a huge computer guy, and I wish I had the words to say it, but they were transferring some data in WatchGuard, and it corrupted the files, the photographs that I took of her house.
Prior to, either as part of your investigation or prior to your testimony today, did you have the opportunity to review any body-worn camera of other officers involved in the case?
I did.
And in doing so, were you able to tell in any of that body-worn camera whether or not Mr. Campbell was wearing shoes?
Objection on best evidence rule.
So the Sosky best evidence would be the photos themselves as to whether or not Mr. Campbell was wearing his shoes?
The video, Your Honor, is the same objection that Mr. Bowman made earlier. You can't have the witness testify to the contents of the video. The videos are the best evidence.
Well, Ms. Boyd, have these photos of the video been introduced into evidence?
I do believe there is a photo. May I approach?
You may.
I can have Mr. Bowman retrieve it, and I can move on with my questioning for now.
That's fine. So for now, I'll sustain the objection.
Prior to your testimony today, have you had the opportunity as one of the investigating detectives to look through all of the items that are still contained in evidence at the Belgrade Police Department?
I have.
And how many pairs of shoes did you find in looking through all of the evidence?
One pair of shoes.
And do you know who those belong to?
Mr. Palmer.
I'd like to show you what's been admitted as Exhibit 9. Your Honor, may I approach?
You may.
All right, we're going to step aside here. They begin showing photos that are pretty graphic. We're not going to be able to show them to you, so we'll take a break here. But when we come back, we'll hear the detective's testimony on cross-examination, and he's asked about what weapons were found on the victim after the shooting. Get here on your front row seat to justice.
Tonight, on Closing Arguments, a shocking quadruple murder, a baby found in a front yard, and a suspect on the run. Will bring you every development as this investigation continues.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV. Join Court TV's Vinnie Politan with the latest and breaking true crime stories.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinnie Politan Investigates, tonight, 9/8 Central, only on Court TV.
Were you scared? Is that why you did all this stuff?
Kind of, yeah. I was definitely intimidated. Intimidated. He was pretty
Scared for your life?
He was pretty big and
Yeah.
very aggressive and
Okay.
I wasn't thinking, yeah.
that you just heard was a phone call between defendant Jordan Palmer and his mother while he was in custody after fatally shooting his neighbor, Stephen Campbell. Palmer claims that it was self-defense, and we're watching now day 3 of the returned male murder trial in Montana. I want to go back inside the courtroom. Detective Martin is still on cross-examination now.
And you thought, in this case, that Stephen Campbell was unarmed, didn't you?
I did.
But it turns out that he wasn't. Is that correct?
All the information that I had from talking to Detective Cervantes, who was on scene, indicated that he did not have a weapon in his hand at the time of the shooting.
But you now know that he did have a knife in his pocket, right?
I know that he did have a knife in his pocket, correct.
And Mr. Martin, when did you learn about the knife?
I learned.
Detective Martin, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
I called you Mr. Martin, so I was just saying Detective Martin. When did you learn about the knife?
I learned about the knife probably within the last week.
Within the last week. And it's been, I think, over 495 days since this arrest, right?
It has.
It's been over a year, right?
It has.
And nobody told you about the knife until now?
Correct.
You didn't go through the evidence and see the knife until now?
I didn't go through the evidence and see the knife? No.
And Detective Martin, part of the reason you came to your conclusion about self-defense was that you believe Stephen Campbell to be unarmed, correct?
It was one factor.
And Detective Martin, is it true that that you stated, as to necessity, the investigation showed that Campbell was unarmed during the incident and thus unlikely to inflict imminent death or serious bodily harm, right?
Correct.
Can a knife be used to inflict imminent death or serious bodily harm?
It can.
Can someone pull a knife out of their pocket and use it for that?
They could.
And Detective Martin, you talked about how you train other officers in using guns, and you've done a lot of use of force training, right?
Yes.
So I assume you're familiar with the 21-foot rule.
I am.
And isn't it true that the 21-foot rule is a rule that applies to attackers who have a knife, right?
The 21-foot rule was implemented as a training guide for law enforcement in the early 80s. In an article called How Close is Too Close.
And the 21-foot rule talks about how an attacker with a knife can close a distance of 21 feet within 1.5 seconds, right?
Yeah, the training on that rule was that an attacker 21 feet, it takes 1.5 seconds for an officer to draw his weapon from holster and address the threat, and that person can close that distance.
So the point of that rule is that that person can cover 21 feet with their knife and get to you before you have the chance, or in the same in the same amount of time that it takes for you to just draw your weapon and discharge it, right?
Yeah, it's more than just a knife.
So you're saying the 21-foot rule does not apply to attackers, is not about attackers with a knife?
No, it does. You said specifically knife, but it's not just a knife.
And the reason the police officers were taught this rule is because they were taught that you need to act quickly before the threat is right there in front of you, right? Or act quickly before that person pulls a knife and stabs you.
I think that rule, like I said, was a training guide for law enforcement to remind them to keep a safe distance between yourself and suspects.
So is your testimony that that rule wasn't about how quickly you need to act?
That was a part of that, yes.
So that was a part of the rule?
Yes.
And Detective Martin, you talked about some self-defense factors that you were trained on during direct.
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
You talked about some of the factors you consider when evaluating whether a use of force is justified, right?
Yes.
One of those factors is ability.
Yes.
And when you were talking about ability, you said, and I quote, that has to do with that they have any weapon, right?
I did.
So whether or not somebody has a weapon is relevant to their ability.
That is relevant, yes.
And even without a weapon, somebody could have the ability to inflict serious bodily harm, right?
I don't know. I guess if they had specialized training that we were aware of somehow, maybe.
If somebody knocked you to the ground and your head hit the concrete, that would be serious bodily injury, right?
I can't answer that.
If somebody knocked you out, would that be serious bodily injury?
That would, yes.
If somebody broke your jaw by punching your face, would that be serious bodily injury?
That would be.
And those are all harms that people can cause without a weapon, correct?
Correct.
And you also talked about opportunity, right?
I did.
And I apologize because I forgot exactly what you said, so can you remind me again?
Yeah, the opportunity section is that they're within a distance and are an imminent threat to that person to execute those actions.
And when you say within a distance, how far of a distance do you mean?
I can't answer that. It's basically saying that they have to have the opportunity if they have a knife and they are across the block or a great distance, maybe the opportunity isn't there.
Based on the 21-foot rule, would 21 feet be the type of distance where there could be a concern?
It could be.
What about 10 feet?
Could be, yeah.